Good morning, everybody. Please have your seats, turn off your cell phones, and welcome to AUB and to the AUB Arab Uprisings Research Symposium. I'm Rami Khouri, Director of the Issam Fares Institute, and it is my pleasure to open the conference with a few welcoming remarks, not the conference, the symposium, to welcome you here and to just make a couple of very quick comments. We will hear from our Provost, Dr. Ahmed Dalal, giving his opening keynote remarks. He'll talk more about what we're doing, but this is a process that was launched by Dr. Dalal last April when he realized that there was something historic, as we all did, there was something historic going on, and that the university, ours and many other universities in the region especially, needed to respond to the this historic moment in a very special way, beyond just the usual occasional meeting, an occasional lecture, an occasional research paper, but we needed some kind of mechanism to really respond, particularly in the tradition of AUB that for over 150 years has been a driver of not just academic research and pedagogy, but also nation building, state building, and contributing to society, the university's role in the larger picture. And he started this off by having a small meeting here in AUB a year ago, and then 5 of us went overseas to the United States and made some lectures and panel discussions. And then he pushed us to kickstart a process which has now been launched, this research initiative, which he will talk about a bit more and explain to you, in his view, what we want to do and how all of you who have joined us can be part of this. I just wanted to mention that we at the Issam Fares Institute see this also very much as central to our mission, which is to link the research capabilities of this university and many others represented by many of you here in the region and around the world, to link that with the ongoing process of state building and national reconfiguration in many cases. And we see this collaboration as central to what we do. So we're very happy to have so many of you from around the Middle East and from around the world. The first and last point is this symposium is not a traditional academic conference. It's really a large brainstorming session in a way. We wanted a lot of people that we thought had serious research going and had significant things to say about current developments to join us in a 2-day discussion about the issues. We've made these different panels to kickstart the process. We were asking every speaker to speak for about maximum of 15 minutes, and we want to really be strict on that. And there'll be somebody in the back that'll hold up a card that tells you have 5 minutes left or you have 2 minutes left, and if you over time she'll hold up a card that will send you either to Guantanamo or to some cafe across the street where you can finish speaking, but hopefully not. But we want to keep the 15 minutes strict so that we really have time to discuss. There's an incredible number of very knowledgeable, talented, articulate, and animated people in this room, and we want to give them all a chance to really have their say. And it's from the discussion that we think we will all benefit the most in terms of talking about, and from the panelists, of course, but then from the discussion to help fine-tune and zero in on the issues that we think need to be studied further. And all of you are doing research, we're doing research, and we think this kind of process can only benefit helping us to clarify the issues that need to be researched, and hopefully from this process develop some collaborative ventures as well. So with those comments, I will again welcome you all, thank you all for coming, and introduce Dr. Ahmed Dalal, our Provost, who will give the keynote speech.
Good morning, and thank you, Rami, for the introduction and for everything you've been doing over the last year and a half. That's me. That's me. The uprisings that took the Arab world by storm nearly a year and a half ago are still unfolding. The patterns of popular mobilization in this unfolding story are manifold. But one constant in the midst of a sea of change is the undeniable courage of the agents of change, who demonstrate time and again that the barriers of fear are broken. However, to say that the models of protestation are diverse does not mean that they are totally random, especially when they are so widespread and persistent. Attempts to crush or co-opt these uprisings are numerous, but so are the creative ways of resisting co-optation. And there are common patterns that can be traced in the seemingly random array of rebellions and protestations. To start with, new actors have emerged from the ranks of previously disenfranchised communities, and they are ready to pay the price for change. Over the last year and a half, we have all had opportunities to doubt the ability of these emerging agents of change to defy the machinations of co-optation and to brave the brutality wreaked on them by the remnants of authoritarianism. But neither brute violence nor the looming threats of lawlessness and societal disorder seem to have succeeded so far in reinstilling fear in the hearts of these new agents. A second, I think, pattern is the dynamism and confidence of a revitalized public compared to the reluctant complacency of older organized opposition groups. Almost everywhere, the forces that made the uprisings are new. Understandably, most of the older organized groups were reluctant to participate at first in the uprisings, perhaps because they would have been easily identified and targeted. In contrast to these organized groups, the emerging forces of change are resilient, persistent, and constantly engaged in questioning the performance of all political actors and platforms. And I think what happened recently in Egypt is a stark example of that. I mean, the reconfigurations of alliances and I mean, you know, there's one surprise after the other. Everyone, you know, the Muslim Brothers came to power. You know, they sort of sweep the brothers and the Salafis, sweep the parliamentary elections, but then in the presidential elections we have a different configuration altogether. And I think what's at stake is that people are observing, they're assessing, and they are changing their position. They are constantly engaged, even though they're not necessarily reaping every single benefit of the political fallout. A third pattern is the emergence of political elites that are closer to the people in their outlook, and by extension, the narrowing of the gap between national identities as shaped by states and identities that resonate with the sentiments of the populations. Again, this is a process, but I think there is no doubt that this gap is narrowing, and that people are playing a bigger role in setting the agenda and in defining their national identities, the national identities of their countries. They're basically taking ownership of their countries. A fourth enduring constant, again, irrespective of the exact outcome of various revolts, is what I think is the irreversible rejection of the principle of hereditary transmission of authority and power. So far, presidential dynasties have been affected, but I think it's only a matter of time before the same logic extends to monarchies and kings. A fifth verity is that the test of all uprisings, once they overcome the authoritarian hurdle, is not just their ability to topple old regimes, but the kind of political, social, and economic order they will usher. And another common test is the test of institution building. Not just because the ability to fill the power vacuum in the aftermath of these uprisings depends on the ability to build institutions to fill the vacuum. And again, the example of the Muslim Brothers in Egypt, who as an organization were not at the forefront of the uprising, but were able to field the largest parliamentary bloc because they had institutions. So this is not the only reason why institutions are important. The bigger and more important reason is that institutions are also essential as a guarantee against total disorder and lawlessness. And this is a threat, I think, to all uprisings. Their ability to, I mean, there is no doubt that there will be a difficult period, there will be a period of transition, there will be economic hardships, and there will be a measure of disorder, but ultimately, I think a big test is the ability to bridge this disorder and to institute an alternative order of sorts. This brings me to some of the key challenges facing the uprisings. Those that have succeeded in overthrowing their tyrants and are in the process of changing the political orders they endured for decades, as well as those who are still suffering the brutality of their regimes. One obvious challenge is the challenge of the rule of law. Again, not just as a necessary ingredient for safety and stability, but as a principle of governance that ensures justice, equality before the law, and accountability to the law. It is also a principle that underwrites the societal contract between citizens and the state and guarantees the protection of human rights of all kinds, including minority rights. Another challenge is the ability to overcome the risks of tribalism and sectarianism. But I would like to point out here that sectarianism and tribalism can serve as last resorts in the absence of a viable national identity that serves the interests of the population at large. So sectarianism and tribalism are not necessarily things to be dismissed offhand. I mean, as much as we all would like to overcome sectarianism and tribalism, I think they're facts of life, and I think people resort to them because they need them in the absence of alternatives. But this is a challenge to be able to overcome sectarianism, modes of sectarianism and tribalism. I think although it's nascent and it's not, I think the story is not necessarily complete, but look at Iraq and the brutality that was inflicted on Iraq. But there is still the possibility of going beyond the sectarian divides, brutal and horrible as they were. And this all depends on the ability to institute an alternative order. A third challenge related to the above two, but worth singling out because of its potential capacity to undermine fledgling democracies, is the threat posed by the armies and security apparatuses of previous regimes. And again, the way to deal with these is complicated, and there will not be one. In some cases, these have to be immediately dismantled. In other cases, it's not possible. In other cases, they have a role to play. But this is certainly a big challenge everywhere. And another challenge is the ability to deliver economic justice and viable programs of economic reform after decades of corruption and failed economic policies. Suffice it to mention here the problem of unemployment that is probably the single most severe threat facing any Arab regime in the immediate future and for generations to come. And finally, there is the challenge of recognizing that we cannot isolate the internal agendas of various protest movements and uprisings from the regional and international geostrategic dimensions of these movements, which means, amongst other things, that the moral certitude and clarity that derives from the focus on one of these dimensions is necessarily complicated when we consider the complex realities of each situation. We cannot think exclusively of the internal or of the external. They are mixed, and they will always be mixed, and this will complicate the picture, and we cannot derive, the kind of moral certitude and clarity that we would wish in dealing with these situations. Quite clearly, then, there are many questions to answer and challenges to address. And the least we academics can do in response to this historic moment, and in recognition of the heroic ability to sacrifice for the future, is to engage more deeply with our societies by using the intellectual and pedagogical tools of our trade: research, publishing, teaching, promoting quality debate in the public realm, and institutional collaborations with colleagues around the world. These are our instruments of activism. And activism is indeed our professional mandate in the realm of ideas and knowledge. We should do this now at two levels: working hard to understand the realities of the changes underway in our region, and pushing back, armed only with factual and verifiable knowledge, against those in the region and abroad who wish to define the Arabs and their changing world in the image of foreign perceptions. The Arab academic community is challenged to contribute to three interconnected tasks. First, to accurately document the events on the ground by diligently researching the real transformations that are occurring, while noting those areas where little or no change has occurred. There are many such areas in Lebanon, by the way. The research and academic community rarely faces an opportunity and a challenge of this magnitude. And this is the time, if there has ever been one, to rise to meet the challenge. The second task is to accurately understand the changes in power relations at all pertinent levels, local, national, regional, and international. The equitable or predatory exercise of power, along with issues of perceived justice and injustice by ordinary citizens, are central to the motivation of those who have revolted against their power structures and governments. A third task is to generate research and analysis that allow the Arab world to contribute to shaping the global narrative about the facts of ongoing uprisings, revolutions, regime changes, reconfigured governance systems, and about national identities. For several generations now, the Arab world has been the subject of analysis that serves the interests of aggressive global political powers and ideologies. But as millions of Arabs take ownership of their destiny, we academics have an opportunity and the responsibility to produce knowledge about the region by the region. This is why we at AUB have launched our open-ended, multidisciplinary research initiative on the Arab uprisings. Working under the coordination of the Issam Fares Institute, the initiative aims to harness the expertise of AUB professors and graduate students, as well as colleagues around the region and the world, to identify and research the most significant elements of the current transformations throughout the region and to achieve the greatest degree of factual knowledge, accurate analysis, and intellectual integrity in narrating this epic and historic tale that unfolds around us every day. In the last year and a half, we have organized numerous lecture series, talks, university-wide panels, and conferences. We've also launched several ongoing research projects, including the AUB Youth Research Group and another project entitled Think Tanks and Arab Uprisings, the Politics of Knowledge Production. We are also supporting more than 20 faculty members working on research projects related to the Arab uprisings and the transformations in society that they reflect, in fields such as political science, international affairs, psychology, youth attitudes and identities, public health, media studies, sociology, food and agriculture, civic engagement, democratization, economics, and others. We embark on these research initiatives not as a defensive move, reacting only to misinterpretations or distortions from elsewhere. We see this rather as the timely and appropriate core mission of our university, which has played this role for a century and a half, even before the modern Arab state system and political power structures came into existence. By the way, at Georgetown, they always pride themselves of saying that they established the School of Foreign Service before there was a Department of Foreign Service. So, we can play a similar thing here. We have always done this in close cooperation with colleagues throughout the Middle East and the rest of the world, which is why this gathering includes scholars from many countries along with our own professors and researchers from AUB. Our role in the academy is to help understand and explain. And given the scale of the changes underway, this is a formidable task that will require the collaboration of many individuals and institutions. So we seek to partner with you in this great intellectual, pedagogical, and most importantly, truth-seeking undertaking. And I hope that today's symposium will help identify other areas where we need to jointly launch new critical research projects.